Good afternoon from Climbing Innovations. There was a customer comment, criticism, maybe complaint, and I just want to reference it, and I want to refer to it and address it. I'm gonna do a little bit of history because this goes back maybe 10 years. When I first started looking at foot ascenders and stuff, and I thought, you know, you'd get the complaints about the rope getting picked by the teeth being too sharp. And I thought, oh great, I'll just take my little Dremel and I'll dull those teeth down just a little bit, and then it won't pick my ropes as much, right? So I took my Dremel and I did those down a little bit, and of course now it won't engage. Back then it wouldn't engage on the rope, so it was like, yeah, okay, maybe there was something I didn't know about that. So this is the S.A.K.A. And one of our versions had a very lockable catch. There's ascenders that you can get that don't have any catch at all, and I think that's kind of can be a safety thing if they kick off unintentionally very often. So this has a really solid catch. The problem with the catch people would then have is that it was difficult for them to release. And being difficult to release, they might not get it released all the way, and then it would pick the ropes because they would try to remove the cam from the rope before the pressure was off. And so just like, let me show you this, just like a needle, this is really sharp, right? I can sit here and I can stick this rope all day long and it doesn't damage the rope. But if I stick it and then pull it sideways, I'm going to take those fibers and I'm going to pull them out. So it's not the sticking it in the rope and pulling it out that causes the problem. It's then how you take those out. So this cam was such that it would lock on the rope very solidly, and in order to get it to release, and this addresses most other ascenders that are out there today, and some of those are life support. This isn't life support. So some of the life support ascenders, you would have to have an action when you release this cam. When you'd release this cam or try to pull this cam out, it would push with this latch, excuse me. When you would try to disengage the latch, it would push the cam back in before you could pull the latch out. So it made it it made it difficult to get it off and led to more rope picking. So what we did is we redesigned that latch a little bit and made it a little shorter. So now when I disconnect with the latch and unlatch that cam, the cam only goes one direction. It only moves away from the rope, which makes it easier to release. Now that leads to the next problem, is if you hit this really hard, and I have to push on that pretty hard, but if you hit that pretty hard, sometimes it can cause that to pop off a little easier. So it's like, well, I can't win. I mean, you try to mitigate one thing, it creates something else. And so speaking of that a little bit, let me just talk about technique. Before I talk about technique, let me mention something too, because when I put my foot ascender on, it can come back in a little closer, I think. When I put my foot ascender on, like I am typically doing when I'm going up a rope, this rope is now under tension. It's solid, and it's hard to move. My foot ascender never gets that because it's under a floppy rope, right? When I lift my foot up, that rope is flopping around, so the cam doesn't have anything hitting hard against it to disengage it. The knee ascender, on the other hand, because I'm standing on my rope, if I'm flopping this thing around, it's hitting a solid, almost solid. I don't have all my weight on here, but if I have all my weight on here, it's hitting something that's kind of a solid wall. So it puts a lot more pressure on that cam. So now if I'm hitting hard on that, it can push that cam past, if I can get it to do it. It can, if I hit it right, it can push that cam past the lock. The movement and everything else makes it where that cam, the latch can get disengaged. So here's the solution. Trying to mitigate it for as many climbers as is possible. Right here. If you're having that issue, and that's something you're concerned about, and you want it, you're going fast, and maybe your form isn't straight up and down. If your form is straight up and down, which is really hard when you're going fast, because we all want to act like we're riding a bicycle and our feet start flailing around because they're going fast. If your feet are flailing around a bit and it's hitting that cam hard and causing it to disengage, and if you want this to be a little more secure, hope that makes sense, what you can do is take a file and just make a little edge right here, so that when this latch goes past that housing right there, it catches on that edge. So just by taking a file and putting a little edge, you can use a round file, or you can use whatever file you have, but just put a little edge on there and start with a small edge and then build it up depending on what you need. But if you put that edge on there, now that cam has a much harder time of pushing the latch out of the way. Kind of helps. It's a modification a person would have to do, but if you're finding that might be your solution. If your feet are flailing around, if you're going fast, if the rope's moving around a lot, it might fix that problem. Otherwise, you know, I don't know how to make it work for for everyone under all the circumstances. Hope that helps. See you in the trees.